Aí, pouco. Aqui, essa ponta. Aqui é meio feita, não toca
No gancho?
É.
Ok.
Ai, mas não posso ficar no frio também.
Fio. Calma. Não vai aí, ó.
Não, sabes o que é? É daquela videira. Esta aqui é a raiz dele, olha, estás a ver? Tem estas raízes pequeninas espalhadas aqui para este lado. E eu quero ver se não descorto. Vamos lá ver. Se ele sobrevive.
É?
Tens luvas?
É.
Agarras aí nele. Ele não partir. Olha a casca nessa grande aí. E vai. Tá bom. Tá. Pronto, vamos.
sai bru. Nem é areia, nem é pedra.
I just went to the building center to get some hardware for the irrigation system. A lot of bits here. Thing about technology, we have so much technology available to us nowadays. I think a lot about when my grandparents used to live here and how did they irrigate their garden here. They had to go down to the spring to get, I guess, watering cans and walk up to the garden and water the garden. I think that's the technology that they had available here. But then when my grandparents moved from here, I was very young, around probably 4-5 years old, but I remember a lot of things. I don't remember how they water the garden here, but I don't see how could they have done it otherwise. They didn't really have a tank here. They didn't even have a well because they went to the spring for their fresh water. But when they moved from here, and they were in their, I'm gonna say in their mid-50s, kind of my age. And so the next place where my grandparents moved to, so my grandpa built a new house, a small house, 2-bedroom, kitchen with indoor, very basic indoor plumbing. It was around the time when electricity came to the village. It must have been 1970, oh, I don't know, maybe 73, 72. And a small house, but my grandpa also built an irrigation system, kind of like what I'm doing, except more basic. Yes, there was a water well. I'm not sure if the property had one before or if they dug it. That I don't know. I don't remember the construction of this new house that he built. I don't. I was a little kid. But my grandpa also built a tank, a water tank, a stone water tank. It was a dual purpose. A lot of the tanks around here were always dual purpose. It was a washing tank, so it had a pad to wash the clothes, and it was a big tank. I don't know, probably 10, 15 cubic meters of water, stone. It was above ground, not in ground, above ground. Here I have elevation differences, so I can afford to have my tank somewhat in ground. And I'm placing it at the very top of the property, at the highest point of the property, just about the highest point. So my grandpa built this tank above ground, of course. This is about maybe a meter high. I don't know, I was a little kid. It could be less than that, but I figure about a meter high. Because to wash comfortably, you have to have that height. And then you would empty it, and there was a channel network, little channels in the ground that were dug, and the water would be led into the garden beds for irrigation. So you know, they moved from here and they built an irrigation system to be a little bit easier for them, so they didn't have to, you know, carry water in cans back and forth, filling water in cans one at a time or two at a time, and kind of like what I've been doing here lately. Although I still, you know, still haven't, it's been raining a bit, and so I haven't had to water that much, but I've already busted out the watering cans a few times. and did it like they used to, right? So it makes me think a lot about that. And so they did invest in an irrigation system to make their gardening chores a little bit easier, obviously. Um, but yeah, and he had a pump that was uh, gasoline and kerosene powered. I remember very, very well. I've started it so many times with the rope, so many times. You would prime the pump because it drained back every time. You'd prime the pump from the top with water that you bring up from the well if the tank was empty. But most likely the tank was empty every time. Yes. So you, with a rope, with a bucket, you'd go down to the well, you'd pull the rope up bucket by bucket, and you'd fill up the tube and the pump, prime the pump, start the motor. It was a Pashanshu water pump, I remember, because he would say it all the time. And you started with gasoline, had two little fuel tanks, one little one with a little bit of gasoline to get going, to get started, and then there was another tank with kerosene, because kerosene is like a fraction of the cost of gasoline, right? So yeah, he would. I started that motor so many times with a rope. He taught me how to do it, and I got it. I got that thing going. I was so proud of myself to start that motor every time. Yeah, and still missing some bits. The hardware store didn't really have, or the building center, really hardware store. So pretty good building center we have here in the village. We actually have two building centers here, and they're very well equipped. The guys are so helpful there. Oh my God, ridiculous. I overheard him on the phone telling somebody that he couldn't get him a cement mixer fast enough or a motor for it, but he would take this motor out of a cement mixer he has on the showroom floor to help him out. I was like, what? Man, what they do around here to help people. Yeah, so out of the water tank comes a 3-inch line, and then it goes in here, is reduced to 2.5 inches. And then from here, I have two really big outlets for some big lines, and then some smaller and smaller. And so this is like sort of where the water for the whole place, for the animal troughs, for vineyard irrigation, for the garden irrigation, for fruit trees. They need watering when they're young. That's the thing. It's like later on they don't, but while they're young, the fruit trees need water. Summers here get very dry. So the idea is to have an irrigation system. Then from one place, I can water any area of the property by gravity without pumps. And all I have to do is come here and open one valve or close the valve. And this morning we poured the footing for the new wall that's going to be built here. I call it the connecting wall, because it connects this two-story structure here. Used to be the animal barn and bedroom upstairs with the house. So we're going to build it out of stone. But as per the latest engineering requirements, you need 30 centimeters of steel reinforced concrete poured in the ground. This is what you have to do to get a building permits. Yeah, this is, and then by contrast, you have a potentially 200-year-old structure that's still standing, and it will be standing for another 200 years, unless there's a massive earthquake, that is sitting on a base stone that's 20 centimeters below the surface. You know, and I imagine that all around the perimeter it's like that. But today, this is how we do it. 200 years from now, will that footing be in good shape as this footing is today? I'm not so sure about that. The good thing is that it's buried in the ground, so I won't have to see its ugliness. And what I'm going to see is the stone wall that we're going to build to match the rest of the house.
There we go. Yucky. Not great to do this, but it beats poisoning the whole potato patch. Now I just have to level it as much as possible. I don't think it was level before, but I'm not sure. I'll go as far as possible to go. I'm going to, I've been working on the design already for a bit, and I want to build a woodworking bench. My grandfather used to have one right here, and I remember the saws would hang from the beam. It was, I think, nails, and the saws would hang here. Back in the day, this was a very important part of the homestead. Not only was the spot where my grandfather had his woodworking bench, he was a carpenter, so when he did projects from home, this is where he worked. But this space also provided for other things. This was where the grapes would get crushed, pressed, and fermented. In this very corner here, right here, there was a wine press. It had a beautiful, it was a granite stone base. I remember so much that I pulled and clicked and go on it to press grapes. It was, I loved doing that. I was very small, but I'd get up on the edge of the press and pull. And then there was the barrel of the fermenting vats right over there. And so from here, it would go to the cellar. It was also where the oxen cart would
park. I remember the oxen cart being here and my grandpa's bicycle. I was leaning against the oxen cart. Well, it's almost ready. I just need now to adjust the height of the well access box. I removed the top tile. It was too high. I had to lower the ground a little bit, so I put a box instead, and now I have to cut it down. Maybe it's about half a meter tall like the tile was, but cutting a tile was going to be a big, huge project. So while the excavator was here, I had him pull one tile. And I replaced it with this concrete box, which is much easier to cut down. So I'm gonna take it down. Maybe I don't know yet. I have to sort of level around a little bit more, and then I'll decide how high. I haven't decided yet. I would like to maybe cobblestone it in time. When most of the project is ready, I want to do some cobblestone paths and so on. It's very common around here, cobblestone. I have no idea what it costs yet, but I see people. There's a guy in the next village over who's cobblestoner or I don't know. I guess that's the right term for it. But still very common around here as a means to pave driveways or what have you. It definitely beats asphalt or cement or anything else. Cobblestone is it. You can set it on sand and fill the gaps between them with sand, so that when it rains, it's still permeable. Like rain, the water can still get in between the stones into the ground. It doesn't have to, just like when you have an impermeable surface, the water's got to go somewhere, right? So that's the next thing, kinda. So I can close this off here, and then the tiles. It's ready for the clay tiles. I'm not gonna do that next week. Next week I'm not really doing much here because I have a tour that I'm guiding for the whole week. I have a group coming and I'm guiding a tour of my region here, the coastal Minho region. So I'll still have a video next week. I have a lot of material, but I'm not going to do much here. Maybe a little bit here and there, tending the garden. I have a little bit of time. My group is staying here in the village, so I'm here anyway. But yeah, it's almost ready. I'm very excited to put the tiles on it. And then the very last thing, I'm gonna repoint the stones with clay that I saved from taking a bit of the wall apart on the other side. But that's for later on when I have time to do this. It's not important right now.
ver, quando tirares a primeira, o gozo que é.